Hello, everyone. My name is Vajra Ma, and today is January 26, 2021, and I'm going to be speaking with Karen Davis today. Before we get started there, I'd like to let you know that this is presented to you by the Women's Declaration of Sex-Based Rights, which can be found at womensdeclaration.com. It's the Women's Human Rights Campaign is the official name, and this is an international organization that was founded in the UK in 2019. And the campaign has produced the founding document, which is the Women's Declaration of Sex-Based Rights. And the declaration reaffirms women and girls' sex-based rights and challenges the discrimination we experience from the replacement of the category of sex with that of gender identity. And to date, January 26, 2021, we have 14,142 signatures from 126 countries and 299 collaborating organizations. Again, you can go to womensdeclaration.com and read the declaration there and sign it if you so choose, and we hope that you do. I am delighted to have today with us Karen Davis. I want to read just a brief bio before we bring her on. From her early exposure to music in the folk choir of her elementary school, and studies of classical guitar, and then 10 years of in-depth classical piano, Karen Davis gained the musical skills that have stayed with her throughout her life. After a break from music while majoring in acting and psychology at New York University, she picked up her musical studies with voice lessons that left her with a strong Broadway rock and roll singing voice. Since the moment she stood on stage at an open mic, she knew she had found her home in musical performance. And from then on, she's played all over the East Coast, from Virginia to Maine. You can find Karen's YouTube channel, which addresses gender identity under You're Kiddin, right? And I'd like to bring Karen on now. Welcome, Karen. Did I get that right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
That sums it all up pretty well.
Yeah. You also taught children a great deal. You taught music to children, and you taught grade school and kindergarten. And
oh yeah. I was a classroom teacher for 5 years, and I teach music now. I still teach the little guys, mostly privately. I teach piano. I don't have any guitar students right now, but I would love some.
Maybe you'll pick some up from this. Let's hope.
That would be awesome. There you go. And my students range in age. I think my youngest will be 4 this week, and my oldest is a grand old man of 8.
How lovely! It's wonderful that bring children into the music. It builds self-esteem. I want to ask you, before I go into your YouTube channel, I want to ask you, because you work with children so much, what do you say, or have you said, or would you say to children who have been told that they might have been born in the wrong body?
Oh, good Lord. Fortunately, I haven't had to deal with that. Well, first of all, I would be very careful, because I would want to hold on to my job.
Yeah.
And so before I said anything besides, oh, okay, I would go to an administrator and ask them, what is the school policy on this? Yeah. Because I know that people get fired, so I would tread very carefully. My own personal thought would be, no, you absolutely were not born in the wrong body. I've been a teaching artist for a long time, and I've worked in a lot of different facilities. I've worked for United Cerebral Palsy a couple of times, and cerebral palsy can be very mild, and it can be devastating. And the population that I worked with were closer to the devastating end of the scale. Are you familiar with the Willowbrook scandal back in the early 70s?
No.
Okay, well, there was a facility here in New York that was for kids who were autistic, judged as being psychotic, and also kids with cerebral palsy. And they're all about my age. And so it was a terrible scandal because they were understaffed and the kids were living in their own feces and they weren't being fed, not because of any ill intent on the part of the staff. There weren't enough people. So in my work as a teaching artist, I worked with some of the folks who survived that. And these were people with severe cerebral palsy, and all kinds of birth injuries. And I mean pain, chronic pain from skeletal malformations and microcephaly and megancephaly and just whole panoply of issues. And none of them ever said anything about being born in the wrong body. The level of suffering that these folks had to endure and the level of discomfort and confinement that they had to deal with on a regular basis, I never heard that. And, a lot of them were surprisingly joyful. And then one of them actually hated me and used to stalk me in the hallway in her wheelchair and try to run me over. But this whole wrong body thing is nothing I've ever heard from anyone who actually has to deal with some devastating physical birth injuries. I've only heard that from trans people who are perfectly healthy, or from, trans lobbyists. So quite frankly, if I were in the classroom, I would probably try to dodge that whole wrong body thing, unless pressed. And since I work with, little kids, I like to think they'd forget about it, eventually. But if pressed, I would probably say something like, I would ask them if they were sick. Do you have a cold? Does anything hurt? Then your body's okay. And just leave it at that and hope that that was a neutral enough response to allow me to keep my job.
Yeah. You brought up a lot of issues in this whole response. You really brought up a lot of issues because it's dangerous territory. And the fact that you contrast it with people who have serious problems with their bodies, but never having said they were born in the wrong body, really highlights the fact that this is ideologically based and just not based in anything but ideology, trying to manipulate something.
Right. So, right, exactly.
So, your YouTube channel, you're Kiddin, right? And we'll put that, we'll put the link in there. What can people expect to go to your channel, first of all, and then right in the mix there somewhere, can you tell us what made you make that channel? What brought you to that point of feeling like this is something that you could, a value that you could give to people?
Okay, well, let's see. Let's work backwards. It's COVID, so I've been home a lot, and I spent way too much time on Twitter, and discovered the extent of the trans madness. And I was exhausting my husband and my friends with, these multiple rants per day. Like, how can anybody believe this? And this is terrible. And, these people don't seem to be mentally well. And why is this accepted as reality by anybody? And so my husband said, you need to get with some people basically of like mind. And he's a very sweet man. He's very diplomatic. And I took that as meaning, you really need to stop hectoring me about this because I cannot help you. Please go find someone else to yell at about this besides me. And I thought, well, no one else will put up with this, with this level of emotional intensity and verbiage. So I should start a YouTube channel because then I can yell at the computer. I also saw on Twitter that women get demoralized by this. And, because it's a constant first of all, it's a constant flight from reality. And so it undermines one's own sense of what's real and what's solid. And that just makes me very angry. And it's also demoralizing because no matter how ridiculous the assertion, other people will chime in and say, oh no, that's completely true. And again, it confounds one's sense of reality. It can also undermine one's sense of self, because it's like, okay, well, I believe this and I know this to be true. And then we have this whole group of people saying, oh no, sex is mutable. You can change your sex. And it bothered me that women were being hurt by this, and I didn't like that at all. And I wanted to create a place where women see that you can indeed talk back to this, regardless of what they do or don't do on Twitter, whether they throw us off of Reddit, and I was part of the gender critical and GC debates QT community. It's like, regardless of what they do, they can't silence us. And I want to put that into action, because it's one thing to say it. It's another thing if someone can actually see you doing it. And the other, what people will find is, depending on the subject matter, I can get a little salty in my talk back to certain individuals and in my disputation of certain ideas. But I try to keep it fact-based. Because that's another thing. The trans ideology is all based on fantasy. And, I guess it's a liberal tendency to believe that once you introduce facts, that people will see the truth, which is not necessarily true. But I also want I want there to be a floor to this, where it's like, okay, you can believe that you can become a woman, you can't actually become one, and here's why.
You do a great job with that. I mean, if it's like medicine, it's like medicine to go to your YouTube channel, because you just lay it out straight. It was unapologetic. You talk common sense, which has gone out the window with all the ideology and the threats. The threat that people lose their jobs if they tell the truth. And you make it just so like, oh, thank you for the reality check. That's your whole style. It's great. So I want to really recommend that women go to your YouTube channel and just get a drink of that good milk.
Thank you.
Yeah. And done with, you're a trained actress, you're a trained musician, the whole thing is funny, as well as just, straight talk.
Yeah. So there is a lot of absurdity in this.
It's insane, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so plenty of material for comedy, the absurdity.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So now you never drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak. You saw through it right from the beginning, it seems like. Is that right?
Well, when all of this was starting to explode, I was kind of preoccupied. My parents died within 6 months of each other, and my marriage, which has since come back together, had fallen apart. And so I was not paying attention to any of this. I was trying to put one foot in front of the other and keep going to work every day. I had also started writing a novel. And so I was, my world was pretty complete. I would hear things every now and then. But I would say it was about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. I was talking to a friend of mine, or I was reading something online. Anyway, I came across the term front hole. And I was like, front hole?
Oh yeah.
What is that? And so this was I hadn't been on Twitter in a very long time, and so I searched front hole on Twitter. And I guess I read for about 2 or 3 minutes, and I was like, okay, that's enough. I'm done with this. This is appalling. And I thought, well, no one's going to go for this. It's too nasty. It's too mean. No one will accept this. And, so I kind of checked out for a while longer. And then, okay, I remember now, I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about gender identity and what it means to be male or female. And I was like, I can't understand why we even have to talk about this. Aren't we past this? Didn't we settle this, I don't know, thousands of years ago? And didn't feminism come along and basically teach us that if you're a woman, being a woman does not limit you, except, it doesn't limit you inherently. It's really misogyny and patriarchy that limits you, not being a woman. Why are we relitigating this nonsense again? And she's, this friend of mine is something of an athlete, and, I bike, and I'm still promising myself I'll get fast enough to race one day. And so we were talking about how gender nonconforming we both are. And I was also thinking, what the hell am I having this conversation? This is ridiculous. Again, I thought this was settled. And, I am still perplexed as to why this is such a thing. And particularly with Gen Xers, it's like, we didn't grow up with this crap. I was there. I remember the Free to Be You and Me, William Wants a Doll, It's All Right to Cry. What happened? Why is everything turned on our head? And why are the children of Gen Xers the ones who are buying into this so strongly? I'm like,
well,
do
you have any theories about why? I mean, I know that it's funded, it's highly funded. If you read Jennifer Billick's blog, the 11th hour blog.com, yes. It is highly funded, and there's an agenda underneath it, and it was plotted out very deliberately.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Yes, that's very clear. And that's pernicious. But again, with Gen Xers, it's like, weren't we supposed to all be skeptical of this? Like, or at least that's what I remember. How we were, I remember this book came out 82, 83, Subliminal Seduction. And it was about the messages that are encoded into commercials. Yeah. And I had many conversations with the kids I was friends with in high school and college about not paying attention to advertising. It's manipulation, and the goal is just to get you to spend money on crap you don't need. When I moved into this apartment a long time ago, when I was an adult, no longer baby adult, but just an adult. So I was in my mid-20s. And I stopped reading Rolling Stone magazine because even with the pretty grunge boys, I'm like, they're trying to sell this to me. They're trying to sell me a lifestyle. And it's like, I don't want to buy a lifestyle. I just want to hear what Eddie Vedder has to say. I don't, I don't want to buy the clothes because I have them all. You don't have to sell me on this. I already bought it. So why are you trying to sell me so hard? And, so I'm surprised at the generational lack of skepticism with people my age, buying into this. It's like, come on, folks, we know better than this.
But don't you people do know better. Don't you think they know better, but they don't dare say so because they can lose their job, like you've already pointed out.
This is true.
You look at the Friends. There's been a media blackout.
Yeah.
A total ban.
There has been
of the dissent.
Oh my God.
So
yes.
Yeah. So people are scared. People are scared, and of course, like you just said, you wouldn't want to lose your job telling a child you're not born in the wrong body, because the schools now are promoting that. Has it affected?
Yeah.
Karen, has it affected your career as a musician? Has any of this gender identity ideology affected your career?
Not as yet, but I'm sure it will, because my YouTube channel's out there for everybody to see. Okay. And, I'm sure that there are people who will not want to book me because of my turfiness. You know, and I have my kind of DIY like punk rock experience or punk rock ethos is like, fine, don't. You know,
Yeah.
Believe me, I will find some way. But there's another part of that where it's like, this is what I do for a living. And you know, I can come and play your event and not say anything about gender identity or about, you know, it can be a completely separate
But that's
aspect.
yeah,
of
but that's
life.
often not good enough for them. I mean, there are people who have gone to speak at universities about, you know, saving the earth or environment, but because they had a few lines like
Right.
Doug Jensen in his book about, you know, gender identity, ideology, he's been censored. So we know that it's like, it's huge.
Yes.
You know, you don't have to address it.
Yes.
You just have to believe it and then, and have spoken it, and then you can be censored. I mean, that's a,
Right. It's kind of like, it's kind of like, well, I posted a video yesterday where I called, you know, basically gender the new state religion. And, you know, I'm a little fuzzy on the history, but I seem to remember that, well, first, you can't be an atheist in this country and get elected to office. You know, to some level, you have to pander to Christians and to religious people, if not by using the language, like using biblical language at some point in time. You have to kind of pay homage to, you know, basic Judeo-Christian whatevers. And so that's what it reminds me of.
mm-hmm.
On the left, it's okay to be critical of Christianity, but it's not okay to be gender critical. And that's also just something that kind of blows my mind. It's like, you have, you know, tremendous populations that are Christian, you know, and various denominations. And we have this tiny fraction of people who are trans. And so if you say something anti-Christian, you offend way more people than you do if you say something anti-trans. So if the goal is to avoid people who are offensive, I would think that, you know, you tone down the anti-Christian rhetoric, but that's not what it's about.
Yeah, but it's about money. You follow the money trail, right? It's money.
Yeah.
Pharmaceutical companies, medical industry, biotech, they've got everything invested in making money off of this trend. And what's also also ironic, Karen, is that the Christian, right-wing Christian, is very much against the trans thing, ironically, right?
Yes.
I mean, ironically, in the whole picture that you're painting right now about who you don't want to offend. I really think following the money tells us where the power is. This couldn't be happening without media,
indeed.
Media capture, academia capture.
Oh my God, yeah.
It's like huge. It's a huge insanity.
Right. And that's also why.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say that's also why it's so demoralizing for people, because it's harder and harder to find any contradictory sources at this point. And you're right about the money. And I was thinking about this. I'll probably be talking about it in a video this week, that if you get, let's say, a 9-year-old and you put them on puberty blockers, right? Mm-hmm. And you cause, that can cause problems with bone mineralization. So you've got someone who's going to be in pain and who may very well need pain meds at some point. And then from the puberty blockers, you go to the cross-sex hormones. And this person is probably going to want to get genital surgery. So you've got more pain meds. They're on hormones for the rest of their lives. Cross-sex hormones also increase the likelihood of cardiovascular events, like deep vein thrombosis and strokes and heart attacks, not to mention the osteoporosis, which can be very painful. So you've got basically someone who, from a very young age, is a medical patient.
Yep.
And they're going to need all kinds of medications
Oh, yeah.
to sustain that identity. And, you know, even if it's not that much per person, if you can get, like, you know, a couple million people or 5 million people to buy into this, well, there you go. You're set. And then another thing that strikes me about this as being absolutely heinous is that so many of these surgeries require correction.
Uh-huh.
So you have the surgery, and then the surgery goes wrong, and then you have to have more surgery to correct the surgery. And then possibly another surgery to correct the surgery that corrected the first surgery.
Big money. Big money.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'd think people could see through that, wouldn't you? Think people see through that, and they don't. They think it's compassionate to let children self-diagnose and say, I'm trans, and then get on this lifelong trajectory of medication and damage to the body. It's pretty, but this is why I like your YouTube channel, because you just tell it like it is. And when you're coming from sanity and from just, you know, the plain truth, you make it really plain. You just make the insanity plain.
Oh, well, yes. Yeah, that was also part of the goal. And, you know, when I started to learn more about this and to learn about how young children are when people try to trans them, you know, I thought, well, you know, I'm glad I was born when I was, because I decided when I was 4 that I was going to be a boy when I grew up.
Yeah.
And fortunately, my parents were way too old to take that seriously. And it also just wasn't done then.
Right.
Now, it would be a thing. We, you know, as opposed to, you know, me saying, I'm going to be a boy when I grow up. No, you're not. It's impossible. Uh-huh. Nuh-uh. Uh-huh. You want some cheese and crackers? Yeah. And then, you know, giving that the amount of attention that it deserves. And so by the time I was 5, I decided that I wanted to have multiple husbands and a lot of kids, and I wanted to wear. We would have arguments about dresses, and then I went out of the dress phase, and I was like real anti-dress for a while, and I wanted to wear my brother's hand-me-downs, even though they didn't fit right or they were too big. But that's part of being a child.
You change, you fluctuate.
Right.
Let me ask you this, Karen. Do you remember why you wanted to be a boy when you were 4 years old?
Yeah. Yeah. My brothers are much older than I am, and they are 9 and 11 years older than I am. And when I was 4, they were 13 and 15, and they got to go fishing and hunting. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was the most adventurous thing and most awesome thing in the world. I liked going for walks in the woods. We, you know, where I grew up, there's a little wooded area. So it wasn't like, you know, woods, but it was, you know, the suburban version of woods. And I'm like, so, you know, it's like, you're going to like the big woods. I want to go to the big woods. Why can't I go to the big woods? Yeah. Now, because I was 4, and I'm sure I was told that, but I'm sure that was also not a good reason. So being 4. So I had to stay. I remember they went out fishing and I had to stay home with mommy and when she was doing laundry. And I was just like, this is crap. This is stupid. I don't want to stay home and do laundry. And that's how it's like in my mind, I am doing the laundry. Really, I was just kind of like walking around and chatting. Because I was 4, but I didn't want to stay home and do laundry. I wanted to go out in the rowboat with Daddy and Tommy and Steven and catch a fish. So I decided that the reason they could go was because they were boys. It's like the boys went out and the girls stayed home. So to hell with this staying home nonsense. I'm going to be a boy so I can go out.
Now, if we'd lived at the time when you would be transed, you would have been taken seriously today, and you would have had a lifelong miserable dependency on medicalization, pain, damage to the body. And you know, if we can get that across to parents, if we can get it across, you know, parents are fighting for their children now. They're fighting, and sometimes some of them are losing. Yeah. Because they're fighting, they're not affirming.
Yes.
Um, it's
Right.
it's so obvious. And again, that's what you make it so clear when you you made it clear right now. It's for stereotypes.
Right.
Stereotypes. It's not because of anything intrinsic. You know, you were fluctuating after that into other things like children do.
Right.
But kids don't get to grow up normally anymore. So
Yeah, and I think that's such a shame. I mean, also when I was growing up, I've mentioned this in the video, where I went to a small Catholic school, and there were 20 girls in my class, 20 girls and 6 boys. And so the girls ran the gamut. Now, granted, it was Catholic school, so one can only be so gender nonconforming in Catholic school, you know, and it was a relatively small group of kids. But, you know, every behavior that, you know, positive and negative, that is possible for human beings happened with these girls. If anything, the boys might have been a little cowed simply because there were so many of us and so few of them. And I grew up with the idea that girls did not have to be any kind of way. That, you know, we have, obviously we have personalities, and, you know, you don't cease being a girl because you're assertive or because you're smart, or you're not more of a girl if you are quiet and submissive and pretty. It's like, so when I got older, I was like, why does anybody believe this? Do we still believe this? Well, I'll be damned. Okay, why? And, you know, it's interesting when you mention the harm to the body, you know, because when I was a kid, the cutting started. It wasn't as widespread as it is, but I had a friend in high school who was a cutter, and I knew a couple of girls who were anorexic, and I had my flirtation with anorexia, but my weight actually stopped going down at one point. It was like, oh, please, I'm hungry. So I fortunately found my way out of that. But it's so weird when you're that age, you don't think of it as harm. You think of it as necessary or right. And you really believe that adults do not get it. Yeah. And they do. It's just that when they were kids, they did something else. You know, there was some other way to act in opposition to yourself when they were teenagers. But I guess, fortunately, I didn't do any lasting harm to myself. You know, people who cut can do lasting harm to themselves, but a lot of the time they have scars, but, you know, they haven't severed a vein, they haven't given themselves nerve damage. With testosterone supplementation in women, it's horrible.
yeah.
And even if that's all they do, yeah. It's, you know,
orgasms can become extremely painful. The orgasms, the sexual response becomes extremely painful if a woman is taking testosterone.
Yeah, I read about that. And before you know, we started talking, I was watching a video. I'd read an article in Fourth Wave Now that there's a woman whose daughter is convinced that she's a boy and is transitioning, but the daughter is autistic. And someone told the daughter that she could grow a penis if she took testosterone.
Oh. And
I was thinking, this poor child must have misunderstood. This is not, and it is. I found 2 videos on YouTube with people talking about how if you take testosterone, you can grow a penis. And I was like, oh, Jesus Christ almighty. You know.
That's frightening. Oh boy.
It really is. One of them was at least somewhat truthful in saying that, you know, you can't urinate out of it, and it's very small compared to an actual penis. But I was like, so why would you be saying this? Why would you say that in effect your clitoris can turn into a penis? And I'm like, oh God, these poor children. Because they see this and they see these people as peers. It's like, oh, please.
Karen, have you had any response from teenagers, let's say, or parents to your videos that they've kind of woken them up or anything like that? You know, you don't always get response. You don't know how your work is impacting you when you go on, you do a video and that sort of thing, you or anybody. But I'm just wondering if you have gotten anything specific back from anybody saying, oh.
I heard from one teenager who said that she's about to graduate high school and she's a rad femme. And I was just like, yay. I had rad femme friends in college. It's very, very good to have them. I don't think I've heard from any parents as yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing that I've been thinking about. I've been thinking about specifically how to reach young women.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure how to do that because, you know, young women tend to think that older women have no idea about anything.
Well, how about talking about, well, true. How about talking about your own experience? And how about this? Have you thought of doing any musical, any songs? Have you done any songs on your YouTube? I haven't seen.
Yeah, there's some up. Yeah, there are a couple up, and actually today I am working on a very long video. I have a quasi booking agent who's setting me up with Zoom gigs, and she asked me for a 1 hour video, like a 1 hour video of a performance. And I was like, you have no idea what you're asking me. That is going to take so long, but okay, because, you know, I'm an artist. It's like, sure. Oh, God. So I'm having to do it in very small segments because my computer is old and I have to email it to her. So when I'm done with that, or as I finish each piece, I'm going to put it up on YouTube. Great. So that, yeah. One of the things that I've always wanted to do is to start a music school specifically for girls. And because I think that women's spaces are extremely important. And also, as you know, doing this channel has, you know, made certain aspects of my life become very clear. When I was studying piano, my piano teacher was a woman. Or I had two piano teachers, they were both women. And I took piano lessons, what was I, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, I think, with another little girl. And so we would go together after school to my piano teacher's house. She would have her lesson, I would have mine. Like we would have lunch together and we would chat and then we would walk home together. And so my formation as a musician was, you know, that took place with female people. And it's always been very clear to me that men are kind of beside the point. You don't have to have them. And one of the things that they can do, and sometimes this is not intentional, but one of the things that they can do is they can really skew a dynamic. And they, you know, so girls will compete for their attention. They'll try to impress the boy. And there needs to be a space where girls don't have to do that. And I had a lot of that. And I would love to create a space in which other girls can have that because they've been written out of law now. So I don't know how I would do that, but it's something.
Yeah, it could be tricky, couldn't it? But you're bringing up, well, it's not. We're not completely written out of law. It's being done, and we're fighting it. But what you're saying really points up the absolute fact that women need their women-only spaces. We behave differently when we're with other women.
Yes.
I mean, there's just no question.
Yes.
And I also, the thing I think that you really bring to the table is using your creativity to deal with the, you were like going nuts with this insanity that people were believing this. Haven't we gotten past this? So
Yes.
you've used your creativity to make humor and to present it on YouTube, to use everything that you have in terms of your talents to help other people wake up. And I think that and the fact that,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I just think that's an inspiration to young people if they would
Oh,
just
thank you.
latch onto that. Yeah,
I
sure.
hope so.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, what else, before we wind it down here, is there anything else that you want to say that would encourage people to wake up from this? I mean, you're doing it all the time with your YouTube videos. I've watched several of them and they're just delightful.
Oh,
And
thank you.
like I said, they're medicine. They're medicine,
Yay.
sanity medicine. Thank you. Yeah.
You're more than welcome. One thing that, well, two things. One is that I'm not sure how to put this into words, but it lights up my soul to know that these videos are inspiring to people and that they are actually having the effect that I wanted them to have. I mean, that is just magnificent. The other thing is that I have a lot of questions. I really do think that these issues are endlessly fascinating. And I've started to look into the mental health aspects of this a little bit. And I would love to talk to a clinical psychologist who practices the affirmation model. And I was thinking about, trying to get someone to talk to me and tell them that I don't believe in this and I want you to tell me why I'm wrong. And I'd love to talk to another clinical psychologist who is gender critical or who does not practice the affirmation model. And, for the sake of my own curiosity, but also to, again, create that floor of how you can actually help, particularly, young girls who are subsumed in this. Like, what can you do for them, or what do they need to help them make the best decision on how to proceed with what must be an extremely painful issue.
Yeah.
So I want to work on that going forward.
That's great. The thing about your YouTube channel is you cover so many aspects of the whole situation. So it's like an education in and of itself, and an education that is very entertaining, right? Not dry at all. If you want to learn a lot about this issue and all the angles, I'm encouraging everyone out there to go to your Kiddin, right, which is on the YouTube, Karen Davis's YouTube channel.
Yes.
It's well worth your time, and you're going to enjoy it. And Karen, I want to thank you for what you're doing, because when I came across it, it was like, oh God, she just makes it so simple, so clear. I because the craziness is really stressful, and
Yes.
Yeah, and you just alleviate that with what you're doing, and I want to thank you for that.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah. Any last words before we say goodbye and go over to your channel?
I'm gonna say this: stay strong, ladies.
Yeah, stay strong. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Vajra. This was really wonderful. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, my joy. Yeah. So I want to remind you to go to womensdeclaration.com and read the declaration and sign it there. And go to Karen Davis's YouTube channel. You're Kiddin, right? We'll put that information in the link down here below in the blurb about this video. Thank you for being here today. We'll see you next time. Thank you.